we've got behavior before relationship, and that's when people burn out. You'll run out of runway really quick if you try to make ethics the heart of your relationship with God.
Girly, so good to see you.
It is great to see you. You have the prettiest smile. When I haven't seen you in a while, I forget how pretty your smile is.
Thank you.
Gosh, Psalm 34:5 face.
Oh, thank you, friend. That's so encouraging. This is one of those conversations that we're going to go wherever the wind takes us. I believe we were supposed to record this when you had your book coming out. So we're going to absolutely talk about a Jesus-shaped life.
Oh, let's just talk about wherever the wind, the Holy Spirit wind blows you, because I don't get enough time with you.
I know.
So to just get to selfishly have some Jennie time makes me so happy.
Me too. I feel the same way. I always attack you whenever we're in a room. I'm like, I have questions. And part of it is, let's just talk big picture about why I do that to you. Because I don't do that to everybody. I should. I'm in some good rooms. But I would say with you, it's you contain things that I keep wanting to grow in. And so that just makes me want
it's just because I'm a lot older than you. But, I feel like at this age and stage of life, truly, Jennie, I was with some young women recently, and they were very gracious in asking questions, which I love that in rabbinical tradition, asking questions is considered worship. I think asking questions, and you do this so beautifully, shows a lot of intellectual humility. And I don't think we have enough of that in culture at this moment. So I just love asking questions and being asked questions. But I told them at this age and stage of life, I'm 62. I can't believe I still get to talk about Jesus. But I said, y'all, I feel like a whole lot of what I feel responsible for now is to tell you kind of the holes I stepped in and broke my proverbial ankle so you can walk cleaner and faster. And so I think if those of us who, are a little older in the body of Christ would in humility go, let me tell you where I got it wrong. And God redeemed me. But also, if you're asking for what way not to do it, I can tell you that pretty well because I've made a lot of mistakes.
I mean, that just makes me so curious because I'm always asking you questions because of what I see beautiful and good in your life. So what would you say, what comes to mind first as oh, Jennie, here's the
mistake. I was such a poser for so long because, it's funny how I think in first world culture, we tend to think of theology as cognitive information. So my systematic theology would have been very similar in my 30s as it is now in my early 60s. But my emotional theology was, my heart just lagged so far behind my head. Not that my head was that smart, but as a young woman with a lot of abuse in my backstory, I learned if I can read a room, I can possibly keep from being in an abusive situation. And so I became very intuitive. And I do think we can take gifts that God has given us and use them, to survive. And that can be okay when you're younger. But as we get older, that becomes armament and usually very self-protective. And so I would have probably answered questions similarly just from a theological, cognitive standpoint. But in my heart, there's a corner of my heart that was so emotionally agnostic, if I can use that term. I really didn't believe a God like that could fully delight in a broken woman like me. I felt dirty. Shame really informed my identity more than the work and person of Jesus Christ. And so I think the biggest mistakes I made for a long, long time was having my heart and my mind relatively segregate. And God has always been so extraordinarily gracious and patient with me, even when he disciplines me, that he just made the lump under the rug so big in my life that I had to trip over it because he wouldn't let me stay where I was. So I'd say the biggest mistake I made was pretending for a long time.
Yeah. What called you out? I mean, what was that like for you? Did it take a lot of courage? Was it a counselor? Was it friends? Was it?
Oh, gosh, it was a myriad of things, but probably the biggest thing was I had a breakdown. I don't want to overstate that, but a little over 15 years ago, the bottom just fell out for me. And I had always been able to pick myself up by my bootstraps. And I had this moment. I had Jennie, you and I have known each other long enough to know I'm kind of old school. I'm like, unless you cut off an appendage, like, stick a Band-Aid on it, take a Tylenol and go volunteer to hold a homeless shelter. Do not be a baby. Now, I'm not quite that rough with other people, but I have been pretty hard on myself. Because I think for years, I believed at some level, the only thing I really brought to the table was hard work. Like I'll be the first to show up and I'll be the last to leave. And so my relationship with God was pretty performative, not rah-rah stage performative, just duty. Like I will just get it done, baby. The idea of being held by God, lingering in his arms, the intimacy that was afforded me through Jesus Christ, that seemed very ephemeral to me. I couldn't really get that. So I was just put my head down and try to do better, be better. And so when people would talk about, having a breakdown, I'd think, I wouldn't say this, but I'd think to myself, well, you just need to just not do that. Yeah, just tough it out, just work harder. And I was teaching at an event with dear friends, those home crowds that, you can just be terrible and they just love you and would say, oh no, God moved. And you're like, well, he uses donkeys and rocks, but I gave him nothing to work with there. Oh. It was one of those events with really dear friends. And I just, in the middle of it, started, this movie's too old for you, but there's a movie with, oh golly, I want to say his name is Albert Brooks, I think, Broadcast News. And he wants to be on air, but he's really not an on-air guy. And he has this moment where he gets to be on the news and he just loses it. He starts sweating profusely. People are calling the station asking if he had a heart attack. And basically I did the same thing. I thought, I don't know if you've ever been teaching and you have like these thoughts almost outside your body.
Yes.
And you're just like this. Yeah. Okay. And you're like, if somebody could see like the balloon over my head, this is interesting. And I thought I am kind of losing it here. Wow. I just couldn't get my mind together. I couldn't be coherent. I couldn't wrap up my thoughts.
Really scary. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always have a hard time landing the plane. So I'm a windbag and a half, but this was like nothing was coherent. Yeah. And I watched two friends in front of me kind of look at each other and you could tell they were almost thinking, I thought she did this professionally. And I wanted to go, I know, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, a friend of mine I talked to after that, who's a counselor, not my counselor, but as a Christian counselor, and I kind of explained to her what happened. I thought, I'm just kind of tired. I had some stuff happening, some family stuff that was kind of Jerry Springer and hard. And she said, Lisa, you had a panic attack. And I was like, no. I was like, I don't have panic attacks. Just because I thought I wouldn't have a panic attack. I haven't really had the luxury of breaking down that dramatically. And she said, I'd really encourage you to get back into counseling because she said, usually panic attacks are like M&Ms. You don't just have one. Yeah. And sure enough, Jennie, soon after that, I just hit this point of going, oh my goodness, I never thought I'd be here, but I don't feel like I can carry the weight of my own life anymore. Yeah. And in those moments, I've never heard God's audible voice, but you know how sometimes he speaks and it's just so resonant. It might as well be out loud. And I can remember verbatim what he said. He said, you've been running scared your whole life. Mm. And so I'm going to take you to the basement and I'm going to sit there with you in the dark until fear doesn't own you anymore. And it was probably 6 months. I knew you then. It was way back in our Women of Faith days. And so I really wrestled with how do I continue to, be responsible with what God, show up and not pretend, because I think it can really do damage to your heart when you fake it. Yeah. But there's also a place where
it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. And it would be inappropriate and selfish. I'll tell everybody where I've screwed up, but there's some things that you go, that would actually be really disingenuous and really not fair. And so there's about 6 months where he gave me just enough grace to show up where I had to show up. And the rest of the time I was pretty much flat on my face. And I mean, I couldn't get out of bed. It might be a smidge of an overstatement, but it sure felt like that without saying the name Jesus out loud. Mm-hmm. And I think it was in that season where I just didn't have enough emotional, spiritual, physical, holistic strength to really keep putting one foot in front of the other, that I learned how to be held. Mm-hmm. And I would say I'm still in elementary school when it comes to really being held by God. But that season changed my life. You know, I always misquoted the verse. One of my professors told me recently, it's one of the most oft misquoted verses in Holy Writ, is when we are weak. A lot of people would say, then he is strong. But what Paul actually says there is, when we are weak, then we are strong.
What?
Yeah, I know. Doesn't it in your head? Don't you fill in the blank and go, then he is strong?
Is it misinterpreted, or we know it wrong?
Yeah, I think it's been mistaught a lot. But like, you go there and go, oh, my heavens to Betsy, my whole life.
That really is a shift, yeah.
That's kind of been the application. And what Paul is teaching, which he does through all the epistles, is basically when you recognize your own incapacity, then that's when you recognize it's the capacity of God. He's the hero of every story. So he's not saying, you know, go get in a ditch of, you know, just constant self, you know, don't get someplace where you're the opposite of arrogant, which is insecure, which is just narcissism in a nicer outfit. Don't stay in that ditch of self-loathing or just trying to figure stuff out. But once you recognize, oh, I'm really broken here, then turn to me for strength. And in that place, when you're cognizant of your own incapacity and your own desperate continual need for my grace, then you'll have strength. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of learned to be an empathetic witness to my own life, to go, oh, wow, you really covered up there. And I just started healing from some things I had lugged around for a long time. So I'm weaker than I've ever been. And I have more peace and more contentment than I knew was possible.
What does vulnerability look like for you today? Because as someone a little ahead of me, when I entered ministry, that was like us having this conversation, that was not normal. You wouldn't have heard leaders talking the way we're talking.
Right.
And yet today it has become more normal. Like, is that a part of this for you? Like, what do you think almost culturally fed into that story for you?
Sure. There was, I mean, definitely when I was growing up, there may have been people having these conversations. I wasn't privy to them. And of course, we didn't have social media. And so most of the leaders that I was around, aware of, some great leaders, but there was a lot of 1, 2, 3s, wrapping a acrostic around it. There was a lot of application, which is not bad.
No.
Some of that is excellent. Again,
I giggle because I flash back to my, short stint in the Baptist church. Yeah.
Yes.
And my notes, everyone.
And great. I mean, I sat under great teachers and I was in great churches, but there was an emphasis on cognitive information and then behavioral management. So, I mean, Jennie, one of my jobs, my first job actually.
Described my childhood. Yeah.
I had a graph I had to fill out every week in 15-minute increments. And so I was in youth ministry, but I had to every week show where I was and what I was doing every 15-minute segment. And then I was graded, if you will, on how much time I spent in a prayer closet. Now, that wasn't metaphorical. I actually had a closet in my tiny little apartment where I got on my knees and I prayed, and then I had to check that off.
Report it?
Absolutely report it and be graded on it. And I had a great boss. That's what he had been taught. There's some people doing some wackadoodle things, but they're sincere in it. And let's not go into what horrible exegesis you and I both labored under for years that you go, oh, that's actually not what the Bible says.
Right.
But if it's been told me 1,000 times, the Bible says, and then usually there's something very performative or punitive on the other end of that. And so I didn't see what I would call today vulnerability. I think where we have to be careful today is I think we conflate transparency with vulnerability. Transparency can be currency now. I just seem so honest, and I can play that on the reel.
Yep.
Well, if there's no risk for you, then that's actually not vulnerability. That's transparency, which can just be a facade. It can be a performance.
Manipulated. Yeah.
Very manipulative.
Yeah.
And so I think authenticity became such a buzzword that even that too became kind of a cloak we put on. Vulnerability is, one of my mentors says, that's living in the data and the shrapnel of your life and others' lives. You're going to get hurt. Yeah. Someone's going to betray you. Yeah. Someone's going to judge you because in an effort to be vulnerable, you said, I really need you to pray for me here. And then they'll disguise that prayer request as gossip, or gossip as a prayer request. And so you're going to get dinged if you're vulnerable. But it's that place, C.S. Lewis talks about love anything and you'll be hurt. Mm-hmm. And the alternative is to not be vulnerable. And therefore you have no real involvement with anybody else. And I'm like, wow, the longer I walk with Jesus, the more grateful I am that he always modeled what he mandated. So even the Trinity, that theological concept, Augustine says only the Christian God lives in a perfect community unto himself. So he's called me to community, which means he's called me to vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And that's, some days I walk that well, and some days I'll revert back to posing. If I'm not under compulsion of Holy Spirit, the first place I go is a critical spirit and performing.
It's so beautiful. You know that about yourself, though, right? It's like, that's so helpful. Like, okay, I spot where I go away from God.
But aren't you glad, Jennie, at this, you're a lot younger than me, but still, you've been in vocational ministry for a long time. Do you find yourself at this stage of your life in ministry and just Christiformity, just becoming more like Jesus? Do you find yourself, I don't really know how to ask this question because I don't want to lead you. Do you find yourself sometimes thinking, I know less now, but what I do know, I know in the marrow of my bones?
Yes, very, very true. Yeah, I'm very overwhelmed by the, I think humility, it so often grows out of humiliation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think we're so afraid of that. And I think I am too still, and I don't want it. But I think, I'm at a place where it just, there's nothing left to gain, and it helps you live like there's nothing left to lose. And I think that freedom is good. And it also is a messier life. Like what you're describing, like if you were to sum up your life in two parts, and all of us can, right? Like we all have the before and after of different events and things we learned. Sure. It's like one was cleaner and more sanitary, but you wouldn't go back to it. And I feel that way about my life today. I'm way more in touch with pain. I didn't feel emotion for so long. And I don't even know how, and how you're describing. I'm so glad I asked you that question, because you just put into words, like it was behavior modification and head knowledge. Like that was the value, and that only gets you so far. Right. But to cross over into vulnerability, into a whole heart, into emotional health, into letting yourself feel grief. I mean, even today, like I have a really difficult situation that I can't talk about publicly or even with many friends. And it's so horrible, like what we're going through. And yet I barely let myself feel grief about it. And so when you let yourself do that kind of thing, I think the whole world opens up to you, but it is way less black and white.
It's so much less black. I used to be such a binary thinker, and I was ruled by fear. And I thought, I've got to do it this way. There's one way. And when you go, oh, wow, the Bible is true and the gospel is real, and Jesus he is absolutely transcendent and perfectly immanent. And there's a whole lot on the continuum that isn't quite that neat and tidy. There's a lot of gray. Yeah.
which gives you
And
grace, right? Like humility and
yeah.
grace, because
And it should give you kindness toward other Christ
yes,
followers instead
that's what
of
you
this
feel.
vitriol of I'm right. I'm like, goodness, I think that, I've read a lot of scholars, I'm sure you have too, who trace a lot of our binary thinking, a lot of the way most of us have a hard time with the scary emotions back to the Age of Enlightenment. And you kind of all the philosophers then did away with a lot of experience. And it just became everything we can kind of put on a scale, we can quantify.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
What
that
happened?
bled
Yeah.
into Christian thought. And
Yeah.
so my mom didn't have the luxury of saying how she felt after the divorce. She went through heck and back. My dad was pretty abusive as a young man. She went through all kinds of stuff, but it was you sing and you put on your pretty church
You pull
clothes and
yourself
your
up by
hose
your
and
bootstraps. Yeah.
you go to church and you pretend, baby. And there was this idea, I think, that even if you said, I'm not okay today,
Wow.
somehow that would sully God's reputation. And I'm like, what do we even do with the fact that he was a man of sorrows? What do we do with the fact that more of the Psalter is Psalms of lament? Because we see through the glass dimly here. Yes, we have joy here unspeakable. We have peace beyond our. Of course, the gospel there is an element that the gospel is incarnate. It has been inculcated. We should be informed by who Jesus is. Our lives should be different, but we're not yet glorified. So that already and not yet between, yes, the gospel changes everything, and we're not in the New Jerusalem yet. I mean, there's some of that that's super messy, and yet our God is perfect. And so you go, yeah, he's perfectly sovereign and merciful and accessible. I'm not. So that gap to me is it should make us more desperate for Jesus and kinder with each other. I think oftentimes in the age we're in, what it makes us is in our insecurity, we act like we have it all together and we're less kind with other people because we're so stinking afraid that if we admit we don't know, we're going to be
a lot of work.
Canceled.
Yeah.
Yes, it's messy. It's on one hand, it's easier to have everything neat and tidy. But golly jeepers, when you get out of that prison of performance.
There's freedom.
I realized, Jennie, the key was on the inside of the cell for a long time. And I didn't have to fake it. And I didn't have to be so concerned about what everybody else thought of me. I will not go back into that cage again. I think it would kill me at this point. Your heart gets freer. And it's not an easier way to live, but goodness gracious, the peace and the freedom and the abundance and the hope and the joy, all the fruits of the Spirit, it's like they can grow outside of that super narrow environment.
I'm going to say something and I want you to react to it. Okay. I'm going to say you have completely hit your stride, are thriving in ministry 62. Like, what is that? Do you believe that? Do you feel that?
That's a good question. I feel grateful. I feel really, really grateful, kind of gratefully surprised because there was no template for women in ministry when I was a young woman.
Yes.
And so there's places that I didn't even realize I was complicit because there were just, unless you married a pastor or you went into foreign missions, there was no lane for me to run in. So I thought I'd be in broadcast journalism or marketing. I had a double major. And then I do Bible studies with high school kids in my apartment. And that would be my great passion. But I wouldn't, there was no place to do that vocationally. So the fact that at 62, I still get to talk about Jesus and see people come to Christ or come back to Christ. I get to write very mediocre books. I'm so grateful. I'm really grateful. I don't know about hitting my stride.
I think you've
I don't
always been
pose
your
as
stride.
much.
I'm just saying things. I just feel like in so many ways, Lisa, like you really are like just thriving in ministry. And it's so beautiful. I love your revivalist heart. This is new for me. I mean, it's
Listen,
not that,
spoken from a true revivalist, that man, I'll take that to the bank.
but you always were. Like you always were. I love when I get to an event and they say you're going to be there because I'm like, big old altar calls coming, like, let's go. And that's how you are and how you've been. Do you see a difference? Like, let's talk about that right now. Like, or has it just been like that for you forever? I think it's the way you share Jesus.
Well, I think when you have been rescued, again, I'm not even sure if C.S. Lewis said this. I think this was D.L. Moody. But, if you quote Lewis or Augustine, you're usually safe. Some really wonderful, godly dead guy said that, I'm pretty sure it was Lewis, actually. He said that sharing the gospel is just one beggar telling the other beggar where they can find bread. And I was so grateful to be rescued by Jesus.
Yeah.
That when I see other people engage, I was just literally this morning, I was with a young woman who was just horrifically addicted and had this to opioids and had a radical encounter with Jesus. And, Jennie, you've seen it so many times, but I want to go, this is true. So how you cannot be excited. Do I like planes, trains, and automobiles? No. I loathe flying, and I'm on planes all the time.
Quality and expresses.
And it doesn't matter if you're in a 5-star hotel. It's still not your own bed, And so travel isn't always my favorite thing, but gosh, I would walk.
I know.
To get to be someplace and see somebody encounter Jesus, either for the first time or to come home to Jesus after a season in the wilderness. So Christine Kane and I were talking about this recently, another great revivalist. And she was like, Lisa, I kind of feel like I did when we were doing youth ministry, which both of us did in our 20s, when there was no money. You were just hoping you had enough gas to get to the next youth revival. And you were so excited if they gave you a t-shirt. That was just epic. And she said, I still believe we've lived a lot more life. I have a lot more, dents in my fender, if you will. But the stuff I believed when I was working in youth camps, when I was in college, I'm still seeing that every day. I saw that this morning. And so I think when you've encountered Jesus in a real way, now I've got a bazillion doubts. One of the reasons I have spent so much time in seminary is I love to think, but I have a lot of questions. So there's all kinds of stuff about organized religion that makes me chafe. But this love story we call the Bible and Jesus, I love the church. I love the bride.
Me too.
But I'm not a huge fan of performative religion.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what's so refreshing about you. And maybe, Lisa, it's why it feels like I would say something like hitting your stride of like, this is, I think of ministry for me the last 2.5 years. And I'm just looking at this he's 7 foot tall athlete that comes out to me after an event and he's just got tears just falling down his face. Like he's not even wiping them away.
Yeah.
He's like, I just didn't know, Miss Jennie, that God loved us.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm like, oh gosh, here's where we are again. Like,
that's right.
Oh, here's where we are.
That's right.
And that kind of feels like what you do so well.
Chris and I were teasing because she said, Lisa, all you talk about is the love of Christ, the love of Christ, the love of Christ. And I was like, I know, I'm a broken record. I can be in any book of scripture. I can be talking about any theological tenet or some paper I've written.
What a great
but it always comes back to the love of Christ. Isn't that the whole point? And so I get dinged on a pretty regular basis that I don't talk about sin enough. I get dinged.
Everybody's got to sing their note, and I'm just going to tell you, you are the mama that you want to come home to, that you're like, tell me about your day, baby girl. Tell me about, oh my goodness. You just get on this podcast. You're like, your smile, Jennie. Like, Be that. Like the world has so little of that. I just want to like totally insulate you from ever wondering, like, should I bring something different to the world? I'm like, this is what the world is craving. Like you are momming so many people, including myself. That's just like, you're not old enough to be a mom, by the way. You're momming all of us just to the love of God. And I think it's so refreshing. It's so, I think the world is so starving for encouragement and just something that doesn't feel cynical, and jaded. And you don't, but you're also realistic. And I love that you can speak to where it's broken still. And it is still broken.
Where I was with a woman this weekend who she's so done with church. And she was surprised when I said, I'm so sorry that's been your experience. And she was like, well, I thought you'd be mad. And I said, no, I said, you need to find a body of believers. Jesus is coming back for the church, not for parachurch. He loves his bride. Right. I said, but there's a lot of places where I would encourage you to be careful because, you're going to have wounds reopened. And so she just then felt free to share some things that had happened to her with Christ followers. And I was have you met Dr. Amy Orr Ewing yet?
I have. I met her in London. Oh, yes.
Is she not amazing?
So special. In fact, I think she's on the podcast coming up. I saw her name.
She's so cool, Jennie. She's brilliant, PhD from Oxford. Right. And so I could just barely stay in her slipstream. She's brilliant, but so kind and so humble. And she speaks before Parliament in Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and is so gentle. I've been around a lot of so-called apologists that kind of lead with, I have to be right. And I want to go, I think we need a little more dialogue and a little less dogma, especially with somebody who's been wounded. But I said, Amy, how do you love the people who, you talk about being ripped. She has death threats. Just coming after her from some of what she's saying in some environments where she's the only Christian. And she said it so much better than this, but she talked about being an empathetic witness. And, most Christians would be, at least vaguely aware of how Hebrews says Jesus is our empathetic high priest. But he was also an empathetic witness to our pain. Wow. And she said, we don't usually start with, I'm sorry. And when you start with, I'm sorry, I see you and you matter, which goes back to Imago Dei, profound theological tenet of our faith. But if you recognize every other human, regardless of their creed or their ideology, but gender, ethnicity, you recognize they bear God's thumbprint and they are inherently worthy of my respect and of dignity. So you start there.
That's right.
You will get to Jesus much faster. But when we start with, I'm right and you're wrong, and all these ideologies, and she talked a lot about just kind of it's called intersectional theory. And it's where we become identified by our wounds or where we haven't been received. And so she said, then we get all this arguing, well, your wounds are legitimate. It's just not your identity. And that's where we get into all the identity politics. But I think because I'm older, because at 62, you can hug everybody and it's pretty asexual. I'm just like, Nana has come to town. And I try to really practice, I see you and you matter. You matter to him and he's my Lord. And so you matter to me. And then we can go where God allows us to go. But I may not be the person who gets to lead you to Jesus, but I can at least love you a little bit. So you go, because that's what he said. If you love people around you, then they'll know you're mine. And I love to teach. I love to preach. I love to break down theology. But if I'm just doing that from a stage with a microphone, that's just noise. Yeah. My papers, if I can't love people, that's just well-cited noise.
That's just 2 Corinthians. That's just facts.
That is.
And it wasn't how Jesus did it. He was so kind to move into the need that people had. It wasn't necessarily even first spiritual. It was just like, oh, you're hungry? Let's feed you.
That's right.
You can't walk? Well, let's heal you,
That's right.
And And I think I hope we're at a moment where everyone sees that just didn't work and that people are open, but they're open because they're hurting. They're open because
hurting and disappointed.
There's a desperation. Yeah.
Disappointed and going, is there something beyond a set of ethics? Mm-hmm. And, I say that all the time when I get to be with some of I love the way God is using you to lead a generation to Jesus, not to religion, but to Jesus. And when I get to be with some of your pumpkins or some of their parents, it's just the coolest thing to see this re-energized. I always say they've been re-gospeled because you see this. Now, I didn't coin that. I think Matt Chandler is the first person I ever heard who used that term, but I loved it because, that's what Paul says. Continue to preach the gospel to yourself. You're not getting saved again. I believe in eternal security, but I am re-amazed by Jesus on a regular basis. And I think if we stay in a place of re-amazement, of wonder, of David saying, come and see, that we've got to have heart and head in this season. And one of the clean things I think you're doing with Gen Z and now Gen Alpha is for them to go, oh, he actually cares about me. Yeah. It's not an ideology, it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. And then that colors everything I do. But ethics come after intimacy. You don't lead with ethics. Holiness comes after relationship. You don't pursue holiness and get to Jesus. You get to Jesus. And then because you want to be ever closer to Jesus, that's where the fruit of the Spirit grows in your life. And I think we've got behavior before relationship. And that's when people burn out. You'll run out of runway really quick if you try to make ethics the heart of your relationship with God.
Friend, I am so grateful for your love of God and your love of theology. I think this is where I knew we'd end up in this conversation, because I think theology is impacting everything about us. And so to talk about it, the tension of it, right? I remember my professor in my theology classes would say, my favorite one, he just would say, you can't ever let go of one side of the rope or you'll be in heresy. So you can't just decide. You can't just decide, oh, it is all head knowledge.
That's right.
No, it's all heart. It's like, it's both. You can't decide it's free will and it's the sovereignty of God. It's both. And it's a mystery, right? Because that doesn't make sense to our minds.
Right.
And yet, I think holding that tension and embracing that tension is what we do. And I think
do we really want a God that is perfectly knowable? If I can wrap my entire finite mind around everything that the creator, sustainer, and redeemer of the universe is, that would be too small a God. I've become more and more comfortable with having some mystery. It fuels my faith. Instead of threatening my faith, I go, oh, what a big God.
Because he hurts your brain all the time.
Yeah, he does.
I've been reading the Old Testament, and I'm reading it really fast. It's by the Bible in a month. And I'm at, I told Zach, I just, read through Chronicles and Kings and Exodus and Joshua and all these things. And I'm like, man, I'm not, I don't know, prosperity. It feels like there's a prosperity gospel here, Yeah. Then you hit Job. Like, like, I kind of wanted that to be the way you work. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, it's not the way you work at all. He was the righteous one on earth. And
that's right.
And everything falls apart for him. So I'm like, okay. So even though I'm trained and I know theology, I'm confused. I'm reading the Bible and I'm going, wait, are you this? Are you that? And he's like going to hit you in the face. Girl, you don't know. You don't know.
Job, and what blows your mind is, it wasn't punitive.
Yeah.
The enemy leaves after the second chapter. We've made him the ultimate antagonist. I'm like, no, he's a bit player in this story. Even in the way God talks to him, it's lesser in the Hebrew. God deigns to let the enemy come before him and have a conversation. So you go, oh, golly jeepers, it's God himself who promotes Job to the house of pain. And that's really hard to wrap your human mind around. But it's like God was saying, Job, you're not going to get this. but your shoulders are actually wide enough to carry difficulty and pain and disappointment in a way that will bring me glory. So I need you to trust me.
For the rest of generations.
Yeah, for the rest of generation. You won't be able to see around the corner of your own story. My favorite, I love Job. I spent a year in Job. It became one of my favorite, and I did not want to study Job. I thought it would be like sticking your hand in a blender. And I had run from pain for so long. I thought if I even looked at my own pain long enough, I was afraid it would kill me. And so Job is what really helped me go into some deep places with God. And I'm so grateful because I still have deep ends. I'm just not afraid I'm going to drown anymore. But there's that point at the beginning of his story where it says he shaves his head and he tears his robe. So he's, unlike me, he's not posing. He didn't pretend. He said, I ache. Those are signs of deep grief in that era. But in the exact same verse, Jennie, and you know this, he says, and he worshiped. So to have a broken heart and raised hands those are not opposite ends of the continuum. There is something where suffering actually increases real joy and real contentment because you go, oh, this was the thing I was most afraid of. And now it's happened and I haven't seen his back. The consistency of God, the presence of God. We still don't understand it. There's things about Job I still don't understand, but I love the kindness and the presence of God you see in Job. I don't want his story, but I will tell you, even at this point of my life, when I look back, if you had me recount the revival seasons in my own life, they're congruent with difficulty.
I know.
Every single one.
Yeah. Everything good, it feels like, is bought with that price of pain,
Sheila Walsh says, I'll never forget it because when somebody gives you word pictures, I can hold on to those truths are stickier to me. But I heard her say one time that she said, and of course she says it with that Scottish accent, so she could read a brochure and I would experience revival. But she said some of God's best gifts are wrapped in boxes that cause our hands to bleed when we open them. Yeah. And I was like, oh, snap. That's a good truth. That's hard to hear when you're younger. You get a little bit older and you become less Energizer Bunny and more Skin Horse. And you go, yep, the presence of God was so palpable in that place. Yeah. I'm sorry you're in a hard place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we all are to some extent,
Yeah.
I've learned to make a home in it and to still see all the good. Somebody prophesied.
Can I take your interviewer hat for just 1 second?
Sure.
I think what you said is profound. You said, I've learned to make a home in it. And a home is very different than a nest. People talk about don't nest in your disappointment. Mm-hmm. How would you describe the difference between making a home in a hard place and circling the mountain the way the Israelites did, and God had to finally say, quit circling Sinai? How would you segregate those?
It is not defining of me. Yeah. I feel aware that this could be a long road, and it could be a road that may not ever end, the pain of it. Yeah. And then that's when you start to go, oh, wait, all of life has had this. Yeah. Oh, this is familiar. Yeah. I've known pain that I can't share multiple times, seasons of it where it's, difficult marriage. So difficult. I could cry now thinking about how hard and lonely that was with a child that is incredibly far from the Lord and causing so much pain. And we are terrified in what to do. I've walked through lots of things and things I can't share, but I know this, and I know, and I don't feel afraid of it. And I feel, I kind of think at some point I accepted that life was hard. Mm-hmm. And in some way that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I didn't live disappointed and I didn't live surprised. I was like, this is there. And look at all of this beauty too. Somebody prophesied recently over me and I've really held on to it. He did not know anything going on in my life, nothing. Yeah. And he said, I see Jennie, and as I pray for her, I see one side of her armor is completely burned and charred. And one side is like glowing and bright. And I think she should lean into the part that's glowing and bright. And I mean, talk about a reality. And I wish I could tell you everything that is behind the charge side, but it's like, there's so much good. I mean, today, my kids love Jesus. Today, we are having more fun than ever. And my husband and I are in a great place, praise God. And there's this other part of me that's a huge part of my life and a huge part of me too. That is like so bad that when you look at it, you're like, how is that not consuming? Like, how do you not think about that every day and every minute? And I'm like, and it's not that I'm naive to it. I'm in counseling, sharing about it with safe people.
Absolutely.
I do feel like I get a choice every day. I'm like, wait, all of this is happening and coexist together. And so I can be at home in the grief, and I can be at home in the loss and the things that I wish were so different. Yeah. And I can celebrate and be free and happy too.
I'm so grateful. I feel like you just totally testified and wrapped modern skin around Isaiah. You know, you'll walk through the fire, but you won't be consumed. Yeah. You know, the water will be up to your neck, but you won't drown. I love that he doesn't punk us. He doesn't say, oh no, if you do it right, you'll never be charred. He goes, no, those that I love will live cruciform lives, and they will all have charred marks on their armor, and it's going to get hot inside there. Yeah. But there's something about that that's purifying, and there's something about that that makes the shiny side even brighter. You know, if we didn't have the dark night of the soul, there'd be no more bright morning. And I'm not a masochist. I'm not a sadist. I do not pray for pain, but I've had enough of it in my own little story that I go, if nothing else, it made me just lean into the stability of Jesus, because there have been seasons that he's all I've had. Yeah. And there's nothing else secure to stand on. Everything else felt like quicksand. And so rather than that becoming a woe is me definition, that became he's always my strong tower. Yeah. He's always my safe refuge. I won't always need refuge, but he will always be my safe refuge. And so there's just something about hard seasons that kind of burn off the religious. Yeah. You know,
well, they keep it from becoming a game or a show, right?
It's or just superficial platitudes. Yeah. It's like, no, he held me in the dark, and a bent reed he didn't break. And I'm nothing if not a bent reed most days. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, the older I get, Jennie, the more I think he tends to use the people in the scratch and dent bin more than anybody else. So I'm like, you know, I want to boast all the more in my weakness, because he has been so kind.
Well, and don't you just feel like, whether it's because Jesus comes back or this is how fast life goes, we're just going to go be home in a minute?
Oh, 100%.
Like it just feels 100%. Like, that's how I feel too. It's like, okay, so if it's 40 years of heart or 20 years of heart, okay. Like,
it's a flash.
Okay.
Let me tell you, at 62, because I remember at 40, well, I don't know how exactly, but say 20 years ago, you go 62. I mean, I thought I'd be in a scooter with a flag. You know, I'm like, oh my heavens, Betsy. And you get to 62, and I had to lose weight over the last couple of years because I was having some heart issues. And so I had to drop some weight, or I was afraid I'd have a heart attack when Betsy was in middle school. And so, you know, it's nice to be a little healthier physically. However, most of what I have now is just crepe. It's just crepe. Your skin just turns to crepe. And I mean, I get hair on my chin now that's really coarse hair. It would be terrible if I ever lose the use of my dexterity for tweezers. And you go, he didn't punk us. This really is a jar of clay. But when even that becomes a beautiful thing. I'm grateful for what this body has carried me through.
How many of our friends haven't gotten to live to 49 or 60?
That's right. A lot of them. A lot of them.
I'll never forget going to Winter's funeral and going, I'm not going to complain about getting older anymore. Like that's a gift. And
there's a grace. And I think, you know, in Christ, if he gives you a long life, I think the only thing I feel like I do well, I'm a good hugger.
You are.
And I'm grateful. And I feel like gratitude is my superpower. I'm so grateful. I would not have chosen me for where he's allowed me to just share the gospel. I would have chosen somebody much less pockmarked. And I don't think I would have put up with me because I've been such a slow learner. And I did spend so many years ruled by shame and fear. And so I look back and I'm like, wow, I dug so many pits and he pulled me out of them and he carried me to new places on his back. It's what Anne Lamott describes grace as. When you find yourself in a new place and you have no idea how you got there, he just carried you there. And so I think because I know you have a lot of young men and women who listen because you are the Pied Piper in such beautiful ways of this amazing generation that we're getting to see all these revivalists. But I would say those of you who are listening in your 20s and 30s and even teens, it gets better. It gets better.
Wow.
It keeps getting better. Yeah, you get crepe when you get older. And there's some things that start to sag, and that's real exciting. But oh my heavens, Betsy, walking with Jesus gets better and better and better and better.
Just hitting your stride, girl. I love you so much. Thank you for this. I
love you too.
If you're listening right now and this podcast has encouraged you in any way, would you do us a quick favor? Leaving a review is one of the biggest ways you help other people find these conversations. We read every single review and we're so grateful for them. It's a way for us to connect with you, to know who's out there listening, and they really do matter. So just scroll down, tap 5 stars, and leave a sentence or two. Tell us where you're listening from.